Thank you, Robina, for being with us.
Good. Okay, here we are again to continue discussing this book of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's about how ourselves to learn to know how to live and die properly so we can carry on our spiritual path without too much interruption. That's the bottom line. That's the point of all Rinpoche's advice. So that we are able to help others. And so the whole book, as we've been discussing, the whole book is geared to how to help your loved ones, you know, because it's obvious advice. It's implicit that it's advice for ourselves, but it's expressed as advice to help others. Okay, so we're going to just sing our little prayer to put ourselves in the right direction for this event. So I'll say it in my own words, what we're saying in the first one, just to get it in our minds, heartfelt, not just repeating words mindlessly. So we're saying these first two lines, until we're enlightened, we are going to rely upon, until we are enlightened, we will rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then we're expressing this motivation, you know, by all the virtuous activity of, you know, all this karmic seeds of virtue that we plant by every second of listening to these teachings, because no thought goes astray. As a result of the, you know, because of the merit, with these merits, the virtuous karmic seeds we plant, may we become a Buddha. So we really can benefit every single suffering sentient being. Sangye Cherdang Tsoke Chognam La, Jancho Badu Dagni Kyapsu Chi, Dagi Chernyen, Gipe Sonam Ki, Drola Penche, Sangye Drupa Shog, Sangye Cherdang Tsoke Chognam La, Jancho Badu Dagni Kyapsu Chi, Dagi Chernyen, Gipe Sonam Ki, Drola Penche, Sangye Drupa Shog. Okay. Thank you, my dear. Okay, everybody. So we're talking this book of Lama Zopa's how to face death without fear. So we looked at why there's fear. And we've seen, you know, Rinpoche says the main reason for fear at the time of death is unbelievable attachment. Attachment to what? Things and people, yes, but mainly to me. And which bit of me? The body. This is the one that's looming large in our lives. And so this is as far as we're concerned, and this is reinforced in our modern culture. This is me, you know. So the terror, and why there's so much terror is because of attachment. And why there's this? Because we've been programmed for countless lives, you know. This is what Buddha's saying. We come into this life programmed with all our billions of past tendencies. And we've died 1 trillion times. Of course we forget, and why we forget is because we're living at the very gross level of mind. As we talked yesterday, we've got gross, subtle, and very subtle, according to the tantric model. Gross mind is limited, profoundly limited. There's the senses, and they're like dumb animals, you know, they're like completely limited in their capacity for cognition, although we give them massive power. And then we have conceptuality. So when we understand the Buddhist view of the mind, we learned it in the sutra teachings and back in the middle scope of the Lam Rim in high school. You know, we learn we've got these two different levels at which we can cognize phenomena. Well, there's levels, there's series, but there's gross level, which is conceptuality of our mental consciousness, the level we live at day to day. Apart from the sensory, there's mental. And in the mental consciousness, we have conceptuality. And that's it. And that includes even all our feelings and emotions. I mean, that's shocking to us. All the level we function at is conceptuality, which means, you know, we've got, there's the intellectual, like, you know, you think of learning theories and physics. That's intellectual. That's thoughts, complicated thoughts. You learn musical theory, such complicated conceptual thoughts that then lead to you being able to play the piano. Making a cake, conceptual thoughts, lead you to making the cake. But when we think of emotions, and we think that's separate, but for the Buddha, you know, and this is where we have to really understand this, which helps us understand what the delusions are, which helps us understand attachment, which helps us understand to distinguish between love and attachment, which helps us understand how to help your loved one to the time of death, to know what is attachment and what is not. Buddha's view is very specific. You learn that all the emotions we have, they're all driven by, deep in the bones of our being, programmed conceptual stories. Love, anger, jealousy, resentment, kindness, positive and negative ones are all just the level at which we experience them is at the very gross level of emotion when the body's involved. That's when we feel something. But then they're driven by a much subtler level, by being conceptual thoughts, programmed in our mind from countless lifetimes of thinking them and then believing them. They're now second nature, you know. When we understand this, it's a revelation. We really will then begin to understand Buddhist psychology, and then we'll really begin to understand ourselves. And then we'll really begin to understand how we can get enlightened and how we can help others. So important to understand the way the mind works. So this attachment, I mean, it's totally primordial and it's vast in its consequences. The whole universe is the product of attachment and therefore the other delusions. This is a shocking idea to think. We think it exists on its own side. We think either mummy made it, daddy made it, somebody else made it, God made it. No, babies, you made it. Everything's your own karmic appearance, as Lama Zopa says. This is a very incredible view to get if we can begin to even hear it intellectually. So, you know, Buddha talks about 84,000 distinct different neurotic states of mind. Thank goodness he narrows them all down to 3. They're all subsumed to 3. It's a really profound, amazing model, you know. And the 3, the 2 that effectively run our lives, the 1 that effectively runs our lives is called attachment. But what we've got to understand is, in the bigger picture point of view, this universe is the product of attachment. This body is the product of attachment. You know, we just take it for granted. We have these 5 senses, you know. And therefore, what is the 5 senses? What are the 5 senses? There's 5 ways that our mind functions through the medium of this body. And what do you think created this body? We did, from countless eons ago. I mean, they don't lay it down in the text like this, but you think about it. I mean, however long, it's very fascinating. What is a human being? So basically, what is a human being of all the different realms of existence? A human, the key characteristic of a human, what defines us as human, is our virtues. That's it. The rest are animal activities. We're now born on a planet looking like a bunch of apes. We even say we're, you know, 98% of the something or other is the same as the animals. I mean, before this planet, this is so weird for us. This is like science fiction, isn't it? Before this planet, from the Buddhist perspective, if our mind is beginningless, then clearly human states have existed since beginningless time. Animal states are beginningless. Animal states, they're all states of mind. They're all fitting with the Buddhist model of the mind. Covers every being that exists. So if before humans were on this planet, of course, in the scientific world, the materialist philosophical view of the universe, we take this planet as the center of the universe because that's where we are now. So we track back the physical world, don't we? We track it back to try and find, when did humans begin? And I have no idea if they found the missing link yet. That's all I remember. I didn't study any of that stuff, but I heard about the missing link. We can see, you know, we have those pictures, isn't it? From the monkey standing up straight, and then we have the man, you know. But that's not the Buddhist view at all, you know. I mean, that is the Buddhist view. That's external, no problem. But what is a human being? Well, a human being, the characteristic that defines us is our virtues, and that's why it's the best of a bad lot. It's the best of it's the best of the realm. It's the best of the rebirth to get, because we can access intelligence. We can access our virtues and intelligence, and they're utterly linked. So if they're our characteristic, and okay, they're our characteristic. Now, if we track back humans, when did humans begin on this planet? I don't know what people say. I don't know what they've studied. I don't know. Is it a few million years, a few billion? I don't know. But what were humans before that? They can't come out of nowhere. They don't come from monkeys. That's a joke. That's the house. The monkey is the house. But the mind, if this is the logic of beginningless mind, if virtue, love, compassion, kindness, which are rooted in dependent arising, they're rooted in the conventional reality, the ultimate flip side of which is emptiness. That's reality. So the key characteristic of a human mind is that we have the means to understand reality. And why do you want to do that? Not to get full marks in your philosophy exam. No, to get the hell out of samsara. That's why. So that's the key characteristic of a human. Where do humans come from? They can't come from monkeys. That's absurd. So what does virtue come from? Well, track it back, yesterday's virtue in your own mind. Then track it back and track it back. And then keep tracking back. And then before humans on this planet, where was virtue existing? Where were the sentient beings existing where there was virtue? Forget the God realms. Forget all those. Well, they have to be in a human realm. So they say in the text, they don't give it in a historical sense of when it was, you know, what year it was. Human minds before this planet were more subtle. The realm of existence was more subtle. A human mind was a super intelligent mind. And that means we didn't have the gross, the delusions were sort of like more implicit. They were quiet. So their body, the 4 elements of our body, remember we discussed yesterday about how the Vajrayana model describes the entire universe in terms of the physical matter being made of the 4 elements. And all minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the 4 elements. So if you track your own mind back and back and back before this planet, and let's say you were a human before this planet at some point, you could have been animals in between, no problem. Then where was your mind existing? Where was the human realm? Not some planet. It wasn't like in another planet. Not like that. It's a state of mind. So our physical energy, what was it? If there were no gross delusions at that time, they were there in the mind, but not explicit. They were latent. Then the physical energy has to be subtle light. That's how they talk about it, human realms and the human beings in the past. Of course, it sounds like science fiction to us, but think it through logically. So there were no gross delusions. Therefore, there was no gross physical energy. So what's created this body with penises and vaginas and eyes and ears and the rest? Our delusions. And which one? Attachment, honey. Attachment is the creator of this body and therefore the physical world we live in. The external world, which is environmental karma, is the expression of the actions of all the sentient beings. So if it's the hell realm, you've got a certain physical environment. Spirit realm, animals, gods, there's a physical environment, except in the formless realm. Their minds are absorbed in this concentration. So we've created, due to attachment, it began to grow when we're in those previous lifetimes and we were so fortunate to be a human in the past, which we must have been, to have the karma to be one now. But, you know, our virtues began to diminish and then delusions began to sort of grow. And then that affects the wind energies, which in turn eventually karmically, so karma is like personal evolution, it seems to me. And then eventually that grows, that causes us to be born on a planet looking like a bunch of apes with penises and vaginas and all these things. We have made them. There's no such thing as a creator. They don't exist from their own side. They're not intrinsic to us. They depend on arising. They're cause and effect. So we have created this body. We have created this reality. Attachment is the main boss. Attachment is way more primordial and more vast than we can imagine. It's not just like being, you know, attached to chocolate cakes. As Lama Zopa says, this entire the way he describes the death process and how you get reborn, how attachment runs the world. The universe is run by karma and delusions, you know. Particularly attachment. Effectively, in the Four Noble Truths, attachment is the main cause of our suffering. So in day-to-day lives, it's there in the mind all the time. So we've got to start at the grossest level. And then slowly we get more subtle in understanding what it is. So attachment is the energy. But so attachment, as we said, is multifaceted. So this attachment is the hunger of always missing something, then hankering after something, then anticipating something, and then holding on to it, and then wanting more of it and never being satisfied. Never being satisfied is a bottomless pit. Getting what attachment wants cannot bring happiness. That's why we get born with dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction is the consequence of never getting what you want, because attachment can't. It's a bottomless pit, as my mother would say. The more you get, the more you want. That is the most bitter suffering of attachment. It doesn't satisfy. It just increases more craving. This is the tragedy of attachment. So we get born with dissatisfaction to the point in this culture where it has become self-loathing. I am nothing. I am nobody. I am garbage. That's profound dissatisfaction from a bottomless pit of constant practice of attachment in past lives. That's, as Lama Zopa says, the worst suffering in the West, you know. Most intense level of attachment. So then we hunger terribly. And then whatever we get, it is never enough. Never enough. It anticipates this pain. So of course, at the time of death, it is unbearable. And then most people never look at their minds and don't understand it. Wouldn't even know such a thing called attachment. So of course, most people, deaths are unbearable. A friend of mine years ago, 30, 40 years ago, who worked in the hospice movement in California, said then, was a given among her colleagues that most people died with fear, you know. So the only ones who didn't, she noticed, the only ones who didn't were those who had a spiritual path. And what that meant was, there's nothing secret about that. What it meant was they at least had a viewpoint about what might happen after death. At least had a viewpoint, which kept their minds uplifted. But if you're a philosophical materialist, which most of us are, and even if we are Christian or Buddhist, that's the pretty prevalent view of the world. It runs the show. It's pretty upfront. Then the attachment just kicks in. It's just primordial fear of terrified of not being me, not having a view of what we will be. It's just holding on to this one, like grim death, you know. Understanding attachment at that level, how it's not able to let go, this will help us understand how to help our loved ones. When we understand that attachment is a vampire that needs an object, so then you give a person the television, the animals, of this and that, and the friends and the chatting and the food, attachment just gloms onto it and will hold on as long as possible. That's just a nightmare and makes it even more suffering to let go, you know. That's why the most important point and the logic for it is this: for there to be utter quiet. Everything in the room of the loved one should be conducive for the loved one's benefit. It's the loved one's gig, okay? I put it that way. It's the dying person is the boss of this situation, not you and your grief. Get out of your way, have your grief and have your tears outside. Deal with that after your loved one's dead. You're there for your loved one, okay? Including for your mouse and the dog and the ant. You're there for their benefit. Sure, have your grief. That's great. But the real learning is just going to be you one day. So get your wake-up call. We're so sentimental sometimes. So everything should be there, conducive for the person's mind to be peaceful. Peaceful. Why? Because then the mind has the space to be virtuous. It's so logical. So you don't feed the attachment. You keep the people out of the room who are going to upset your loved one's mind. Rinpoche says you can't stress this enough. And when we understand attachment, we will understand why. If we don't understand attachment, it's just, we confuse it with love. So we have all the pets and the music and the blah, you know. It was actually funny when my mother died. I was in England. It was in 1981. I'd been a nun for a couple of years. And I've got 7 siblings. And my older sister, Jan, she, out of the blue, one afternoon, I got a phone call. Mummy just died. Mummy just died. What'll I do? What'll I do? She said. I was the first one she rang. It was midnight in Australia. And I said, say on many pemi hung. Say on many pemi hung. And she said, oh, what? She had Bach, she had Brahms blasting in the background because my mother was a classical musician. So I said, turn the music off because my mother just died. She was in the chair and she was dead. So she said, oh, many pemi hung to her ear. It was so funny. Oh, what? She said. Very funny. So that day, Lama Yeshe had just arrived 100 miles away at Chen Raising Institute in Australia. He'd just arrived. And he'd met my mother one time. So I rang Lama and asked him to, do stuff for my mother. I was very happy for my mother. Oh, what? My sister said. It was so sweet. Anyway, okay. So, yeah, blah, blah. Attachment. We have to understand it. We have to understand it. We have to understand it. First, intellectually, please. You can't just leap in and have an experience of it first. You've got to know the words first. Then slowly we build upon it. We build upon it by thinking about it every day of our practice, Gets more and more, we identified ever more subtle levels, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle. And that means we distinguish between attachment and say, good qualities, love and things. We think, old grandma loves her cat. She does, but mainly it's attachment. I mean, God. Listen, I see now these animal shows, it's almost repulsive. It's practically it's almost going to be the right soon to have sex with your animal. I mean, so many people have sex with their animals anyway. I'm sorry, I'm being very gross here. It's degenerate times, and it's naked. I'm shocked. I'm shocked when I hear it. Living with their animals, sleeping with their animals. Some of you must sleep with your animals too. I'm trying to embarrass you. What do you think you're creating the cause? This guy was kissing his dog on her mouth. They lick the person's mouth. We think it's virtuous. People feed. I'm sorry, some of you people might do it. I don't know. Don't be embarrassed. I'm just making my comments here, not understanding the difference between love and attachment. People feed animals out of the same plates. I'm not trying to be rude about animals. It just shows our incredible attachment, and we confuse it with love. We think it means love. Love is a virtue. Love is connected to the other. You have it. But at the moment, because most of us, we love the people we're attached to, including our dogs, and we're attached to those we love, and we sort of conflate them. This is our big problem. So we've got to know the difference between love and attachment. I tell you, it's incredible. Because remember too, everything you think and say and do and see and hear and taste and touch and smell leaves an impression in your mind. Like it puts I guess you touch yourself, it's like you're shooting a movie all day and all that gets stored in your mind. Lama Zopa is like taking photos all day. Everything gets stored. So if you want to be born an animal, just get attached to your animal, please, and sleep with it every day and love it and stroke it. You'll get born an animal, no probs. You've got to check out, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want to familiarize yourself with? Well, Buddha would suggest the best is to be born a human, why you can keep using your intelligence. So then familiarize yourself with human qualities, which is love, compassion, kindness, not attachment, anger, jealousy, resentment, depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. That's animal minds. That's spirit minds. That's hell-being minds. And attachment is God realm minds. Virtue is human mind. And look how hard it is, this crazy human planet, you know. So familiarize your mind with humanity, with virtue, with goodness. Lift your mind up. Yes, be kind to your cat, but make it love and compassion, not attachment. Be there for the sake of the animal. And that's the trouble with the moment with our attachment to animals. When it comes inconvenient, the poor vets now, all they do is kill. But we pretend it's out of compassion. How rude we are. It's out of inconvenience. Well, that money we're spending on our animals is becoming too much for us, so we kill the damn thing. We've got to really understand attachment and not how it isn't virtue. This is fundamental to being a Buddhist. If you don't do this, you're up the creek without a paddle. Can't be up a garden path without a paddle. Up a garden path, yes. We've got to distinguish between attachment and love. Because attachment is the main reason you're going to suffer at death, baby, and the main reason you suffer in your life. And don't feel guilty about it. Have compassion for yourself. It's like discovering you got cancer. You have compassion for yourself. You know, except attachment is a mental illness, not a physical. That's all. So anyway, where were we yesterday? So we've been through, let me get the book again. I'll just go through it briefly and touch on the points again. And then we've got still plenty more to talk about. Where's my book? That's no good. Can't find it. Hang on. Okay. All right. Wow. Suddenly, this happens sometimes. My documents don't open. I don't know what's happened. Excuse me, people. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so I'll just go through the chapters just to hear them, so you'll see the outline of the book, really. You know, so you know, part 1, how to think about death and reincarnation. Chapter 1, what happens after death? It's a practical explanation, you know. Then chapter 2, everyone dies, so there's no need to be afraid. So this is really more the point that Atisha makes. You know, death is definite, the time of death is uncertain, blah, blah, blah. Death is easy when you've given up attachment, just exactly what we were talking. Get ready for death by living life with a good heart. Chapter 5, the best way to live and die, practice the 5 powers. I haven't mentioned that as kind of an approach of using bodhicitta, you know, living your life and then dying like that. And then 6, pray to be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land. We talked about that. So part 2 is how we go from one life to the next. This is more like the technical, you know, what happens at death. Just explaining the various components, the 12 links of dependent arising at the time of death. We discussed that, how grasping kicks in, you know. 9, the stages of death, intermediate state and rebirth. We discussed that, the 8 stages and what happens, intermediate state and then being reborn. And then finally, death is what the yogis have been waiting for. So I think I want to go into that. For anybody who's thinking about taking a highest yoga tantra initiation, or anybody has already taken one, this is a really crucial one to understand. Because I just read Lama Zopa's words. I think it's the best. It's really important you understand this. In fact, it's crucial you understand it. Okay, page 57. All right, I'll just read Lama Zopa's words. It's the best. Death is what the yogis have been waiting for. Of course, it sounds hilarious, doesn't it? You know, what are you talking about? How weird. So it's possible to get enlightened at the time of death. So generally, it is not permitted to openly give details of the methods that the great yogis use. However, I feel it would be useful to talk briefly about them here. So death is the moment they've been waiting for. At the point in the death process when all the grosser consciousnesses have ceased and only the extremely subtle consciousness is left, as discussed, you know, as we just discussed in the process yesterday, the yogis, those who have observed karma well, kept their precepts purely, precept is vows and commitments, you know, spent their lives training their minds in the clear light meditation and have been able to recognize the base time clear light, the imagined, visualized one. You go through this process, you're imagining. now they are able to recognize the clear light of death. They can remain in meditation in the clear light, conjoined with emptiness for as long as they wish. 1 hour, 3 days, many months. Some meditators stay in the clear light meditation in their hermitage for years. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's root guru, Ling Rinpoche, for example, stayed in meditation for 13 days. Lama Yeshe, too, remained in meditation after passing away. It seemed like about 5 days. So there are many examples like this. Apparently, one of the previous Ganden throne holders, the Ganden Tripa, they call, this is the head of the Gelugpas. People often think that Dalai Lama is the head of the Gelugpas. He's not. The Ganden Tripa, and there's like the 98th or the 99th or the 100th is now, you know, it's a job they get for a certain number of years, and it's the first one was Tsongkhapa. Apparently, one of the previous Ganden throne holders spent some 21 days in meditation. And I remember at Buxa, in Buxadur, when they all escaped from Tibet, there was a Sera monastery monk in the same house that I lived in, a very simple monk who spent many days in meditation after passing away. It seems that the great 8th century Bodhisattva Shantideva spent something like 30 years in meditation after he passed away. So when we hear this, we go, meditation, what the hell are they doing for 30 years, for God's sake? What are they even doing for 5 days? What they're doing is, you see, the key point of all of this is we need to access the subtlest level of our mind. Why? Because the grosser level, which is the level we live at, conceptual and sensory, isn't capable of cutting through all the nonsense and seeing reality, realizing emptiness, and then perfecting it and removing all the obstacles from the mind so that you can then get your mind enlightened. We've got to access the microscope of our mind. It's the way to put it. Because that level of mind is capable of cognizing all this stuff. And that mind, the subtlest mind, is the clear light mind that happens at the time of death. This is a technical, precise point. It's not an emotional thing. It's not weird. It's not mystical. It's literal. So the yogis have been practicing all their life, training, going through these 8 stages, training using this in the context of their sadhana, which I'm going to describe here. And then because the death one is the most powerful. So they can't wait for the death to come, because then they can finally get the subtlest mind, and the greatest ones can actually get enlightened at that time. So it's a technical point. It's a literal thing, not some mystical, trippy, hippie thing, you know. There's recently a story in one of the Indian papers about one old Tibetan lady, you know, who died and meditated for many days. And they were kind of testing her. I remember His Holiness and all his discussions with all the scientists, the last 30, 40 years, all these amazing conferences and all the best brains in the West having conversations about exactly this. What is consciousness? When does it happen? When does it blah, 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 which is marvelous, you know? And he talks about how one time he joked and said they've created a machine, some kind of equipment to, you know, to wire up the yogis who are dying. And then when they die, and they're in meditation at the subtle level, they're wiring them up and trying to find a way how to detect subtle consciousness. So there's a willingness by many people to do this now because they so trust His Holiness, they so admire his knowledge, you know. But he joked one time, said there's only one set of this equipment. So when one of his yogis dies down in South India, they've got to send the equipment from Dharamsala, and by the time they get there, the yogi's left his body. And then if the yogi dies in Dharamsala and the machine is down in the south of India, they've got to send it up to Dharamsala, and by the time he gets there, the yogi's left his body. So they've got to have more equipment, he said. But it's marvelous that they're looking into this. This is what's fantastic, you know. And even that book I mentioned, you know, that book I mentioned, The Undead, by that journalist, that doctor, saying in this business of giving organs, I can now say with certainty, he said, that consciousness is not a function of the brain. I don't know what it is, but at least that I can say. So it's marvelous. People have been forced now to question, in the modern world, forced to question their assumptions. And this is the power, the amazing role of His Holiness, you know, this incredible humility, bringing in other people, you know, it's incredible. So marvelous. So by concentrating in this subtlest state without distraction at the time of death, some practitioners achieve enlightenment at this time, which means they've removed all the obscurations from their mind, which are preventing the mind from being omniscient, etc. They're capable of doing that. And that level of mind, the extremely subtle mind, the clear light mind, these words are the same. That's the microscope of the mind. And the one at death is more potent than the one that you can get even in the best meditation in your daily life. So by concentrating in this subtlest state without distraction, some practitioners achieve enlightenment at this time. They actually realize the three bodies or the three kayas of a Buddha. They're able to transform ordinary death into the wisdom body. I'll describe the Dharmakaya. Ordinary intermediate state into the enjoyment body, the Sambhogakaya. And ordinary rebirth into the emanation body, the Nirmanakaya. Some practitioners, like Lama Tsongkhapa, achieve enlightenment in the intermediate state. So basically the death process we described, okay? You go through the first 4 stages and you get, you stop breathing, and then you get all the way to the end of the 8th stage, and that's the clear light mind. So the great meditators who are going through that process, and that's the meditation I want you, that Steph, you're happy to lead the meditation, sweetheart, this afternoon or this evening for you guys, yeah?
Yes, we were talking about it just before you came, Robina.
Good.
Yeah.
Simply I'll tell you the chapter, get that and just read it slowly. That's it.
Yeah, no, I've got it in the tablet format on my tablet.
Wonderful.
Yeah, perfect. I was just going to read through that.
Tell me which one it is. Tell me the chapter. Or what's the number?
It starts on page 25. It's the 8 stages of death.
No, that's not it. Lama Zopa's got it as a meditation, and in one of the practices at the back. No, it's a numbered practice. That's the actual process, which is good to think about, but the Lama Zopa's led it as a meditation. So if you look, let's have a look in the book. I'll just find it at the back for you. Hang on a second.
In the book or in the resource, in what you sent?
No, neither. No, in the book, in the actual book. Not that's what is that's what we read yesterday, right?
Yeah. No, I realize that.
That isn't the meditation. Rinpoche has done it shorter and has spoken it as a meditation. And
well, that's what I was hoping to try and do, yeah, but go on.
Oh, no, I'm about to tell you where it is. Have you got the book itself? No.
Not in front of me. I've got the only book I could find here was How to Enjoy Death, and there is the meditation in that, but again it seems more spoken than meditative.
That's the point. That's the one I want. So How to Enjoy Death, you mean the big fat red book?
The big fat red one, yes, yeah.
Okay, because I know that book was completely re-edited and done differently, but I'm
assuming... no, I know. I think that's all we've got here.
I know that. So I will send you another PDF. I will send you a PDF, which is the one we did of the original manuscript, and which is similar, which is the same one. I'll send you the one. I'll send you a PDF of the actual meditation. Don't you worry. I'll send it to you.
In the break, yeah?
Yeah.
That's great.
As soon as yeah, I will. I'll do that. Let me think. What time? Well, I better hurry because I've got to. Okay. I'll send it to you. Don't worry. I will send it to you. Okay. And just read it slowly.
No, I shall.
And all of you, the point is what I'm getting to now. Simply you read it. Now, the point of what you're trying to do is, which I keep saying, see it as empty, meditate on emptiness. We get confused about that. So the whole point of that is, meaning, as you're going through each of the steps, you're conscious. You're trying to imagine you're being conscious when the breath stops. No, when the earth element ceases, when this ceases, when that ceases. You're pretending initially. And then as your mind, because what you've got to realize is as you're going through this process, what's happening is your grosser consciousness, your sensory and your conceptual, which runs the show now, is weakening. Now, when we go to sleep, we know it weakens, but then we just go into unconsciousness. We miss the boat. So what we're trying to do is imagine staying conscious as the eyes cease, as the ears cease, as the tactile ceases, as the earth element goes, as the water element goes, when your breath stops, then the white vision, then the red vision. You just imagine it. And at each point, you're imagining your mind's getting more subtle and you're just trying to think this has no inherent nature. This is completely empty. You're just saying those words. You're familiarizing your mind with it, trying to stay conscious at an ever more subtle level, because that's what the yogis have accomplished. They can do that. That's the point. That's what we're pretending to try to do. That's what the meditation is. And just do each step slowly, read it slowly, and try and taste the meaning. Do your best. I mean, it's puzzling. It's not how we think at all, just you do your best.
Will do. Thank you, Robina. Yeah.
Okay.
Just remember to send it to me.
I certainly will. I promise. In fact, okay, I'll do it. I promise. Okay, where was I now? I forget. 67 or something it was. Here we go. Death is what the yogis have been waiting for. Okay, here we go. So, by concentrating in this subtlest state, that's the clear light mind or the extremely subtle mind, the microscope of your mind, I call it. Some practices achieve enlightenment at this point. They actually realize the three bodies. Okay, basically what this means is this. When you stop, when you're conscious, when you're very subtle consciousness, when you get to the clear light level, the eighth one, that's the subtlest level of mind. So if you use that and turn it into the Buddha mind, that very subtle mind is what becomes known as the Dharmakaya. That's the actual name given to the mind, the enlightened mind of the Buddha. The word Buddha actually refers to that mind, that word Dharmakaya, all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-wise, all-pervasive, all-powerful consciousness, unmanifest, pure, unmanifest, all-knowing, all-pervasive, all-seeing, all-compassionate consciousness. Like they talk about God. I used to love when I was a little girl, God is everywhere. I think about it all the time, God is everywhere. It's exactly the same here. That mind, that consciousness, when it's enlightened, yours the same, everybody's, it pervades the universe. Now think about this. Why, how can it? What do you mean pervades the universe? Well, think about it. Consciousness is cognition. Finally, its job is to cognize that which exists. That's its job. That's omniscience. It's a shocking concept to think. So if your consciousness is not physical, think about it. Right now, your mind is not physical, but it's locked in this bag of bones. Because of gross attachment and gross delusions, we have this bag of bones, lugging it around because of intense, unbelievable attachment. But your mind is not physical. So as you progress spiritually and you get concentration and then you expand, you get less delusions, you're literally expanding your consciousness. You get clairvoyance. You can see the past, you can see the future. And eventually that expands to when you become a Buddha, there's nothing your mind can't cognize. I mean, it's so cosmic for us, this concept. Your mind exists wherever there is existence. It knows that which exists. It's infinitely compassionate, infinitely powerful, infinitely wise. That's the meaning of Buddha. Sounds like God, doesn't it? I remember I gave a talk at the Catholic University in Melbourne years ago. I had a 20-minute slot. And I didn't know what to talk about until I got there that morning. I looked up the dictionary for the definition of God. 3 essential qualities. Infinite wisdom. It's called omniscience. We always use Greek words, don't we, for the fancy things. Knowing everything. That's first quality of God. Second, infinite compassion. Third, infinite power. Well, guess what, honeys? They're the 3 characteristics of a Buddha's mind. Same, but the radical difference, of course, is the different interpretations of this. The Christians say that existed always from its own side, a first cause, didn't have a cause, it's permanent, uncaused, and it's the creator of everything else. None of that exists in Buddhism. But Buddha says everybody can become that mind. Everybody can become a Buddha. That's the point the Buddha's making. So, Dharmakaya is the fancy term in Sanskrit for that mind. That's actual Buddha. Now, that's not much use for peanuts like you and me, is it? We can't communicate with that. We're as thick as posts. And the only reason a person is a Buddha is driven by their unbelievable compassion. So they manifest in bodies to help us. So that's known as Rupakaya, form body. Now there's 2 of those, and this is what we're getting to now. The next one is called the Sambhogakaya, enjoyment body. Look at all the deities in Tantra. That's the Sambhogakaya, the subtle light body. You know, you can't see it. When you don't walk around seeing green ladies with light bodies and, you know, Yamantakas with 40 million arms and legs and looking wrathful. It scare the life out of you. You don't see that shape and form. That's the subtle form that the Arya bodhisattvas, the bodhisattvas who realize emptiness, they can see that in their meditation. Some can see directly. Tsongkhapa got all his teachings from Manjushri in the Sambhogakaya form. He sat down at his table and had chats with Manjushri, for goodness sake, because his mind was so powerful and so subtle. That's the enjoyment body. Now, so when you, the very subtle mind at the time of death, that's the regular clear light. But when you use it to become enlightened, it becomes the Dharmakaya. Now you go through the process, that's ordinary death. You transform ordinary death into that. Next one is the great yogis who then can go through the process of, like Tsongkhapa, to the intermediate state. That's your subtle mind. So the subtle mind used by Tsongkhapa in the intermediate state, he was able to utilize that more subtle mind And he transformed, first of all, the Dharmakaya. No, he became enlightened in the Sambhogakaya, in the Bardo, that subtle mind, like your dream mind. That can be transformed into the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. Then when you get born, that can be transformed into the Nimanakaya, which is the form of like Shakyamuni Buddha behind me, the regular one we can see. So those three stages, death, intermediate state, and rebirth, can be used by the greatest yogis to turn them into the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya. And that's the whole, as Lama Zopa says here, I'll read you what he says, okay? Many Tibetan Lamas have passed away in meditation since Tibetans first came to India as exiles in 1959. For those whose lives ended in Indian hospitals, it was difficult to receive permission to leave the body alone for a while. Ordinary Indians never believed that such a thing as meditating while passing away was possible because they'd never seen it happen. Their usual concept was that the moment a person died, the body should be taken out and burned before it began to smell. Thinking that a person was dead as soon as the breath stops, the doctors were amazed that these lamas could stay in meditation for long, long periods without the body decaying. There's many stories like this. Far from there being a bad smell, the room had a fantastic sweet smell due to the power of their realizations. Well, I remember when Lama Yeshe died. He died in Los Angeles in a hospital. And the hospital was so kind, and talk about it later in the book, so kind, allowed Rinpoche, they took the body and put it in another room, and they were allowed to sit there all day with Lama on the gurney, and they all meditated. And then they took the body and they drove it very slowly from Los Angeles up the coast to Vajrapani Institute. And then many of us from around the world came, a couple hundred of us from around the world came and had a whole week of, ceremonies. And Lama's body was sitting in the room there, which was actually when I lived there, it was my bedroom for a while. But I remember this was in 1982, whatever it was, when Lama passed away, 83, 84, March 84. So I remember when we'd go every day to Vajrapani and do the ceremonies, and we'd see Lama's body there, and it was in the coffin, and it was there for 5 days, and it did smell very sweet. You walked in, it smelled sweet, 5 days, and he was in meditation the whole time. Even though his body had been moved, they said, don't touch the body, but he had the power he was a great yogi. He was able to be meditating the whole time, for those 5 days while it was there. Because what happened was when they took his body to then get ready for the ceremony, they built a stupa up on the ridge, a special kind of stupa. Song Rinpoche was there, and he's a master at all these things, and he guided all the people there to build this stupa, like a cremation stupa, square with little doors around 4 sides, and then a cone shape at the top. But before that, you build the square, and then you bring Lama's body, and Lama was dressed in these special clothes and put in a chair, and his body was completely flexible still. He'd been lying there for 5 days, but he was still flexible. And it was then the monk who was organizing it, the ex-monk, said that that's when the drops came out. Those red and white, they saw. That was when his mind left the body after 5 days. And his body was still flexible. So they put it in this square cremation stupa in the chair with all these special robes on, and then they light it. Then they build a cone with a chimney out the top. And then you burn the body. You just puja, very many, Yamataka, I think, very hours of many things offered. Many hours of this puja, burning Lama's body. Anyway. So you too can transform death, intermediate state, and rebirth. The practices these yogis do are available to those who have taken a highest Tantra initiation. They are the quickest methods for achieving enlightenment in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. According to the Vajrayana, and this is what Lama Yeshe talks about in his commentary on the 6 yogas in Naropa, mainly one of the 6 called Inner Fire, was called the bliss of inner fire. Rama says this very clearly, and it's a commentary on a text of Tsongkhapa's, that from the Vajrayana point of view, you can't get enlightened unless you have a highest yoga tantra empowerment, and you take the 4 initiations within the highest yoga tantra. Each of those purifies the body, speech, and mind, and the subtlest imprints. Each of those gives you the permission to, enables you, empowers you to achieve the Sambhogakaya, the Nimanakaya, the Dharmakaya, and then finally the Svabhavakaya, the truth body, they talk, something like that. So it's got all the steps all laid out within the highest yoga tantra. You can't get enlightened, they say in the Vajrayana, unless you have a highest yoga tantra initiation. But as Lama Zopa says, don't think you're going to get any realizations. You need these in your toolkit. You know, you need this in your toolkit. The more in each life that you take the lay vows, the bodhisattva vows, the tantric commitments, the advice, yoga tantra, blah, blah, blah. You've got all these in your toolkit, and you keep them purely, you keep them with faith, you keep them with confidence, and then you keep deepening those imprints. And they are the tools you need and the seeds you need in your mind to get enlightened. That's why it's so important to look up, if you're committed to this path, you don't rush. You use your common sense and you connect with these lamas and you do all these practices and you keep your vows purely. That's the basis of success, keeping your vows and commitments purely. You know, this is the basis of success. Do your practice, and Rinpoche talks about here. So these are the quickest methods for achieving enlightenment in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. That's what they mean by that. The one brief lifetime of this degenerate time, the lamas, the reference there, and it's implicit, is always to this previous realms of existence, the previous human birth before this planet, millions of years ago, who knows when. They never sort of pin it down, you know, of this degenerate time. So by doing these practices, you can collect in just a few years the merit that would otherwise take you 3 countless great eons to collect on the Mahayana perfection vehicle path. Again, this is a technical point. The more we study Tantra, the more we'll understand this technically. But you've got to accumulate a certain amount of merit, meaning you've got to accumulate a certain amount of virtuous karma and a certain amount of wisdom, the 2 accumulations. So it's a bit like, you know, the sutra path is like you walk, you've got to get somewhere, it takes you, you know, you've got to walk 10,000 miles, or you've got to, yeah, and so it takes you a long time to walk there. But the Tantra one is like you fly there, it's quicker. So the reason to do it is not because you're just lazy, it's because you have such compassion, you can't bear the thought of not getting enlightened as quickly as possible. That's what energizes these great tantric yogis. They don't need sleep. Lama Zopa doesn't need sleep. They don't need bodies. The only reason is to be of benefit to others. You know, they're driven by compassion. Unbearable compassion, Lama Zopa says. These are the quickest methods for achieving enlightenment in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. By doing these practices, you can connect. Okay, these practices have a very special arrangement. That means your Yamataka sadhana, your Vajrayogini sadhana, your Chenrezigs, your highest yoga tantra sadhana. These sadhanas, these practices, they have a special arrangement. And doing this sadhana every day, the complete sadhana, not just simply generating yourself as the deity and then reciting the mantra without the mandala, not like that, is very important preparation for death. You will understand this when you have received the commentaries on the generation stage and the completion stage practices. Whether you do the long version of the sadhana of the deity you are committed to do, or the middle length version, they both contain the essence of the generation stage practice, which is to say, transforming the 3 experiences of death, intermediate state, and rebirth into the 3 bodies. Even the short Yamantaka sadhana, for example, has these 3 important points. By meditating in this way, you prepare your mental continuum by purifying ordinary death, ordinary intermediate state, and ordinary rebirth, enabling you to actualize the path-time Dharmakaya, the path-time Sambhogakaya, and the path-time Nimanakaya, thus planting the seeds to achieve the result time 3 bodies. When you just recite the words, there is, of course, a positive imprint left on your mind, but you're not strongly preparing your mind as you would if you were to actually meditate. Sirkon Sencham Rinpoche used to emphasize very much that if you are busy and can't do much meditation in the deity sadhanas, when it comes to your daily commitments, you should do more elaborate meditations for your main deity. You can do your other sadhanas quickly. However, in all your sadhanas, you must do the 3 kayas meditation, even if it's not elaborate, even if you don't follow the extensive procedures. You should at least meditate on the last point, the 4 qualities of the foundation, having the divine pride, thinking, this is the result time Dharmakaya, this is me. When you do the dissolution, like when you do succession guru yoga or any of the other deities, and you go through the dissolution of the deity into yourself, this is the actual practice of the generation stage. And you go through those, you kind of use, you're conjoining, you're bringing in the 8 stages of death into these different stages of the dissolution of the deity. And then when you get to the clear light mind, you say 4 things. This is the Dharmakaya. This is empty. It is in the nature of bliss. And then you say, and this is me. These are the 4 points which is mentioning. And you meditate there on emptiness. And then on the day you die, because you have trained your mind by doing your sadhanas every day, you are able to recognize what's happening, the 25 stages of dissolution without missing any, just as you had meditated. Because your mind is well trained, you are able to recognize the clear light. And during the intermediate state and at the time of birth as well, you'll be able to meditate on, to visualize the deity. So it's basically you're training yourself to die, to become a Buddha. Like if you don't, you say, oh, when like I've got a driving test in a month. Oh, I'll be okay on the day, you say. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you won't. You're training yourself now. You're faking it until you make it. You're training yourself. And when you get to the driving test, easy peasy, falling off a log easy. Same here. It's all mapped out for us in the practices. Practicing the highest Tantra path like this, using death as a quick path to enlightenment, is incredible. It is the quickest way to purify the defilements, the dualistic view. In other words, having prepared during the generation stage, on the basis of that realization, you then actualize the path-time Dharmakaya, like the pretend one. You're training. You're driving around the streets pretending you're at your driving test. Sambhogakaya and Nimanakaya on the completion stage. What? In other words, having prepared during the generation stage, on the basis of that realization, you then actualize the path-time Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya on the completion stage, actually ceasing the intellectually acquired defilements and the simultaneously born defilements. Eventually, you cut even the subtle defilements, the dualistic view, and in that moment, achieve the result time 3 bodies, enlightenment. Lama Yeshe talks about this in a very sweet way in Introduction to Tantra. He's in a more detailed way. He talks about it in Bliss of Inner Fire. So sweet his teaching, so clear, This is how you can enjoy death by using the tantric path, the quickest way to achieve enlightenment. So if you have already empowerment, then you keep practicing. And if you haven't, then you make aspiration when you're ready. When I'm ready, may I meet the right lamas, may I get highest. And these days, of course, because there's no teachings anywhere, you just got to really keep your eyes open and make prayers every single day, make aspiration every day. May I achieve, may I be, when the time is right, may I be able to, meet the right lamas to achieve, to receive the highest yoga tantra empowerment. And eventually may I recognize my yidam so I can do these practices and, be ready for death, which means be ready for the next life. Program yourself ready for the next life. That's the point. And if you're really brilliant, you can shortcut everything and get enlightened. And of course, the greatest yogis can do that, but we can be inspired by that. Okay, so with practice, we can at least face death with a happy mind. So right now, our mind is full of distractions. To try to stay on an object in meditation in ideal circumstances for even a few minutes is extremely difficult. While we are going through the process of dying, it will be even more so. This is why it's so important to train as well and as often as possible, practicing the sadhanas, as well as the purification practices, and of course, destroying self-cherishing and developing bodhicitta. The weaker our self-cherishing is at death, the easier it will be to go through the death process with a focused mind. As we get more control, as we familiarize our minds with these meditations, it's definite that we will be able to control our mind at the time of death. Even though we might not be able to realize this practice, actually get enlightened, we will at least face death with a happy mind. Okay. So then the next section, part 3, as we've been discussing, is the practices to do in the months and weeks before death. So as I said at the back, all the practices are there listed in terms of 87 distinct different practices. So 2/3 of these practices are already in this first section. Lots and lots, for the weeks and months before. And the first bit is, again, like we said, helping out at the time of death is a big responsibility. Helpers should be close to the dying person. Use your wisdom. Merely hearing some of these practices can help. Then, create a conducive environment. The place should be beautiful. display holy objects such as statues, images, stupas, the position of the bed. You can do it like, facing with the west and all that business. No tobacco. Tobacco, cigarettes, some of this, the lamas, especially in the Vajrayana, I think they talk about how it's a really poison, destructive plant that is linked to very heavy negative beings. And many people who smoke cigarettes attract spirits, it attracts spirits to be there. It's heavy, heavy, heavy. And not to mention that, we can see what it does at the gross body. It causes, cancer. So can you imagine what it does to the subtle body? So Rinpoche says here that when someone asked the great Lama Panchen Lama Chökyi Gyaltsen back in the 17th century, who composed the incredible teaching Guru Puja, as well as many other teachings, including the root text of the Gelug Mahamudra, which is the basis of Lama Yeshe's book Mahamudra, that came out a couple of years ago. When they asked him to perform Powa, the transference of consciousness at the time of death, the first thing he would ask is whether the person smoked. And if they did, he wouldn't do the practice. It seems that smoking makes it difficult to transfer the consciousness because you're polluting your subtle nervous system. You're polluting your subtle channels. So there's no benefit, So you keep tobacco out of the dying person's place completely. No pets, no animal skins. It's heavy energy, it attracts negative. That's shocking for us because we're so attached to our pets. We don't like to hear this, but hear the logic of it. And then a calm and peaceful environment. Now, all the next series of chapters are all the different practices. So there's a grouping of them, what to see and touch. For example, in this Vajrayana, everything that you contact with any of your senses, as I said before, it leaves an imprint in your mind. Nothing goes astray. It's so powerful. So everything that they see and hear, because we've got senses, so you utilize them. It should be conducive for that person to be reminded of the Dharma, if they're a Buddhist, and to keep their mind peaceful. If they open their eyes and the room is dark and dingy and smelly and there's clutter and machines, how depressing for their poor minds, already confused. It's so obvious, Show statues and pictures, practice 1. Show the Mitsupa mantra, special mantras, practice 2. Show the name mantras of the Buddha who protects from the lower realms, practice 3, and they go through all the way through the book to 87. Show the mantra called just by seeing, all these different things Rinpoche's come up with. Then you touch, that's seeing things, touching things. Bless the body with a text. There's a special text Rinpoche likes, he talks about. And he's got a tiny version of these little texts in this little box he could get from the FPMT office called the Liberation Box. Bless the body with a stupa. Bless the body with a turn of prayer wheel. Bless the body with a blessed cord. Now the practice what to think about, next chapter, what to think about. Make sure your loved one has given away their possessions. Because we mostly do wills, but this is really important because, it becomes a very painful thing for the person, especially if they've been using, you got to make sure they give everything away in their mind. It's very powerful for them to have that karma of generosity. So they stop being attached to all their stuff, terrible things can happen with wills. We know that. A different story I'd heard from nurses and different people, just like one family screaming over the daddy in the bed, not even dead yet, about the will, screaming to each other, fighting. Can you imagine the torment for the poor dying person? There's a nice saying, he says, in the Tibetan ceremonies of the dead, this book he keeps quoting from this Tibetan who wrote it in Dharamsala for the Tibetan people. Your last speech is the will. Your last food is the relics. Your last drink is the blessed pills. They have this saying, So they might have written wills in Tibet, but we do that. And so it's so important to give everything away and to be happy that you've given things away. And one of the many practices to do after your loved one has died is to make sure every possession of your loved one is given to people. Give it to the Dharma Center. Use the money for the Dharma activities. That's so profound benefit for the person who's died, Excuse me. So talk about your loved. So now all the things to talk about your loved one's guru or Buddha or God, depending on the person. And if they don't have a faith in anything, then talk about their qualities. Another one is talk about Amitabha's Pure Land or heaven. Talk about your loved one's good qualities. This is a really powerful one. Rinpoche only mentions it once, but it's a very brief sentence. But tell them they've lived a good life and praise a person. Like I said, most of us don't praise ourselves. All we do is think about bad things. So when there you are dying, you're full of anxiety and fears and all your guilt and your worries, it's all looming large. So tell your mummy that she's a wonderful mummy. Tell your daddy and forgive them everything and just say loving, kind words about their qualities. It's like nectar to hear this. Calm their minds down. They can rejoice in their qualities. They can, die with a peaceful mind, not guilt and fear and shame. Even if your mummy's been a creep, I don't care. You tell her what a good job she's done. We're all got delusions. Come on. Talk about your loved one's good qualities. Talk about compassion or bodhicitta. Well, depending on the person, you know, if a person is really self-centered and unhappy and freaking out, compassion is not what they want to hear. So you talk about what's benefit for their mind. Lift them up, you know. Next chapter is what to hear. What to hear. So many here. Hear the names of the Buddhas, you know, recite the names of the 7 medicine Buddhas. Just let them hear it. This is for mice and dogs and babies as well. Recite the names of the 35 Buddhas. And mantras. I tell you, this chapter took more than anything to put together. It's got so many mantras, you can't believe it. There's a mantra, recite the mantra of beam of completely pure stainless light and the mantra taught by Buddha Drodin Gyalpo Chö. Who's ever heard of them? Recite the mantra for alleviating fear or pain. Recite the name mantra of His Holiness the Dalai Lama or your loved one's own guru. Recite the name mantra of the Buddha who protects from the lower realms. Recite other mantras such as Amitabha Buddha. Then you've got the 10 powerful mantras as a grouping, 2 different groups. So Chen Rezig, Medicine Buddha, Lotus Pinnacle of Amoghapasha Mantra, Mitugpa, Namgyalma, Guru Rinpoche, Kunrik, Milarepa, the mantra of beam of completely pure stainless light, the Maitreya Buddha. Then there's another grouping called the 5 great mantras, some of those and a couple of extras. There's so many. Rinpoche loves all these, and they're like medicines. They've each got their own function. But of course, the one you like best, if you do Medicine Buddha, perfect. Don't worry about it. Then you can hear sutras. Rinpoche particularly mentions recite the sutra for alleviating pain, a particular sutra called Great Noble Sutra on entering the city of Vaishali. Or recite the Heart Sutra or the Vajrakata Sutra, or play recordings of videos of teachings. All these things, just you know, examples, and most are in the back. They're in the actual book. Now the next is what to meditate on. Well, there's a whole series of things. Recite the Medicine Buddha practice. Meditate using stupas. Rinpoche has spoken a very sweet meditation, visualizing stupas. Meditate on Tonglen. He's got a meditation on that. Meditate on the death process. This is what I'm going to send you to do, you people. Then sleep meditations. Sleep in the lion position, as I mentioned. Meditate on the process of going to sleep. It's similar to the death one, but it's slightly adjusted for when you go to sleep. Sleep with bodhicitta. Sleep in the guru's lap, a sweetest meditation. You can do that every time you go to sleep. If you've got real devotion in your guru or particular Buddha you like Tara, when you go to sleep, you visualize Tara, of course, as your guru on your pillow, and you lie down in her lap. I mean, it's the sweetest meditation, the sweetest way to sleep. You've got to have devotion for that, you know. Of course you do. It's so sweet. Sleep with emptiness is a wonderful meditation. Rinpoche is guided on emptiness. Or do sleeping yoga, particular practices in the highest yoga tantra. If you know those ones, you do those. Meditate on the emptiness of death. Meditate on the emptiness of the mind. So, you know, I'll just read this one. It's very sweet. Rinpoche says you can help your loved one. It's done it as a meditation. Of course, you've got to understand something about emptiness for this to be useful. So you can help your loved one think about how their mind is empty because it is a dependent arising. To meditate on the emptiness of the mind that appears to not merely labeled by thought. Tell them that the base of the label mind is that which is formless, that which is not obstructed, not obscured by substantial phenomena, and therefore is clear. This means that phenomena can appear to it, that it can perceive phenomena, just like a mirror, which, because it is not obscured by the substantial phenomenon of dust, is clear. Objects can be reflected in it. It can reflect objects. That is the base. That's the base. And mind is the label that is simply imputed by their own thought on the base. Mind is merely imputed by thought because there is this phenomenon that is formless, not obstructed by phenomena, clear, and that perceives objects. So what is their mind? It is nothing except what is merely imputed by a thought. They can see now that there is no such thing as mind existing from its own side. There is a mind that exists in mere name, merely imputed by thought, but it is empty of existing from its own side. And while the mind is empty, it is existing. How is it existing? It exists in mere name, merely imputed by thought. It is unified with emptiness and dependent arising. This is how all phenomena exist. Now, the point is this: as the person's mind is getting more subtle, and people are going slowly through weeks and months of this, your mind's getting more fragile, more subtle, literally more subtle. So this kind of meditation, if they're a practitioner, can be so powerful because the mind in a more subtle is easily more able to understand emptiness. It can be very beneficial. But of course, if it's your Catholic grandma, you don't read her this. Recite your loved one's daily practices. This is a major way to help your loved one if they're a practitioner, Or if you can't do that, I mean, one thing I've done is recite all my practices because I haven't memorized all of them. But of course, when you get older and sicker, you can't remember, even if you have memorized. So you have them all, and I have an iPod, my iPod and my iPad, and I listen to my prayers. So, if I'm dying and I've got no one around, I'll have my prayers on, just blasting in my ear day and night on repeat. Except I've got to take out the Miles Davis, because when my prayers finish, then Miles Davis kicks in and all my jazz. So I've got to take that off. That'll disturb my mind to death. I have to remember to do that, have it ready. I'll say, this is my death iPad and there's my life iPad. So I can then hear my prayers all the time. Recite your loved one's daily practice. That's a really one to help your loved ones. Recite their daily practices. That's what Lama Zopa did for Lama Yeshe. He would just recite, because Lama Yeshe's main yidam was Hiruka, but just Chakra Zambara. So Rinpoche would read out the practices for him, as well as a self-initiation. Help your loved ones practice poa, if that's one of their practices, Then, next chapter, what to do to purify negative karma. More practices, but, structured content. So the purification helps alleviate fear. The negative karma that we have already created is what causes fear. So in order, because it all comes up in the mind, so it's order to help our loved ones not be afraid of death, for it to not be frightening, we need to help them purify their negative karma. Purification practices are the solution. Then they can have a happy death, and it will be much easier to attain liberation and actualize the path to enlightenment. You can lead your loved ones in various purification practices, depending on their level of practice. Prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, for example, and the practice of Vajrasattva and the 4 opponent powers. If they have taken a highest Tantra initiation, you can help them with other practices, such as Samaya Vajra and the offering of Tok. And if they have completed the deity's retreat and the fire puja, the burning offering, one of the most powerful ways for them to purify is to take a self-initiation. It purifies everything. So these are the practices so important. If we have, again, taken highest yoga tantra, highest tantrum she calls, and we've done the fire puja and completed the retreat, then we can do the self-initiation. And all that I'm saying, Rinpoche says it's just the most powerful practice, most powerful. But Samaya Vajra also. Remember, Malcolm, you'll remember this, when Manjushri days, and then it was like a miracle in 1986, wasn't it, or 85, 86, we were invited. Rinpoche was invited up to Manjushri. I think Geshe-la wasn't there. And did you come to the retreat? We did Samaya Vajra retreat. Did you come to that? Do you remember, Malcolm? 85 or 86?
Yeah.
I'm sure you must have.
So I think so.
You were totally involved there. And that was so precious, because this particular practice, Samaya Vajra, Samaya means commitments. And so we've always breaking our vows and commitments, especially with past lives as well. So this practice is especially very short, very sweet. She's done a very sweet practice, and in the book, this is incredibly beneficial for purifying our negative karma, And the mantra is so sweet and so simple. Oma Prajadika Ha Hong, Oma Prajadika Ha Hong. It's a very special deity. You visualize at your heart, and you visualize is green, and you just visualize totally purifying all your broken vows, all your refuge, all your bodhisattva vows, all your tantric vows and commitments. It's such a special, powerful practice. And this time of this very painful years ago, some of you might remember, because of, the Geshe-la, Geshe-la, many of us lived up there. I lived up there. Malcolm was very part of all that drama when it happened. You'll know about it if you understand what I'm talking about. And so we somehow, like a miracle, Rinpoche got invited. Geshe-la wasn't there. So many of the students and all of us, and I went up to it too. I was so happy because I'd lived there for 5 years. I was part of it. And we did this wonderful retreat with Rinpoche to purify the broken karma. I'm so happy about it. And that's, since then, of course, no more connection. But that was so, so special. Samaya Vajra is really special to do, and it's so easy. And in this book, there's a very short practice Rinpoche's written. It's in the book. It's so special, I tell you. It's a very short mantra. Oma Prajadika Ha Hong, Oma Prajadika Ha Hong, Oma Prajadika Ha Hong. So sweet practice. Then also, Okay, so Rinpoche talks a bit here. So if you've taken a highest tantra initiation, you could help them with other practice such as Samaya Vajra, etc., you know. So it purifies everything, negative karma in general. This is the self-initiation, they call it. Once you've done the requisite retreat, the fire puja, then you can do the self-initiation. This is so special. Purifies everything. All the negative karmas, as well as broken vows of individual liberation, bodhisattva vows, tantric vows and commitments, even root downfalls. So when you lead your loved one in one of these practices, it is essential to remind them to have strong faith that they have purified the various negative karmas, broken vows and other obscurations collected since beginningless rebirths. How much we purify depends on how much confidence or faith we have that we have purified. In just the same way that how much blessings we receive from the Buddhas depends on how strong our devotion is. We've got to remember this. This is so incredibly important. You know, we're not just the faith. When we say faith, we think it means crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. It's not that. Confidence. Look at confide, with trust. When you say the word confidence, we immediately feel better. It's more strong and kind of optimistic. That's the meaning of the word faith. So the point is, this is so profound. It's so amazing. It's so simple. As Lama Yeshe says, we create negative karma with our mind. So we purify it by creating positive karma with our mind. So the very process of purification itself, and I promise I will lead the meditation. Somebody asked me, I'll do it, the four opponent powers. You know, we think it's a holy thing, like Vajrasattva does all the purifying, blah, 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 the Buddha, blah, 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 you know. It's you who purify. It's you who have regret, the very first step, acknowledging your ridiculous actions that you've done that are going to harm you and you're sick of suffering. It's you who turn to the doctor, the Buddha, because he's our doctor. And you're so delighted you've got a doctor whose methods are valid medicines. You are the one who do the work. You are the one who has compassion for those you've harmed. You are the one who then does the visualizing of Vajrasattva, the nectar coming. You use the Buddha, the nectar's coming, but you are imagining it. You are wanting it. Your mind is purifying. Your mind purifies your mind. So the more confident you are when you do it that you're purifying, that is what purifies. We have such a strong view of the self-existent me who's bad. And we do our purification, we visualize it and we say, oh, I'm still bad, you know. This is just insane. And then the fourth step is you make a decision to change. You're the one who purifies your mind. It's just, Lama Zopa says we are insane not to do the four opponent powers every day, you know. Such a powerful practice. And I always do it in my own words. I don't do it reading books with bells and whistles and Sanskrit and stuff, because you just do it like religion. You do it, it's your own practice at the end of every day. It's like being your own friend. You are the one. And that's why we have to understand also regret. We misunderstand regret so badly. When we hear regret, oh, I regret killing, I regret stealing, we think either, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's just anger. That's useless. Or we think, I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. That's guilt. We love that view. It's completely mistaken. It's a mistaken concept. Regret is a wholesome, self-respectful attitude that recognizes that because of your stupid ignorance, and we're all ignorant, we've done things in the past because we're ignorant, because we didn't know any better, that are sowed seeds in our mind that will ripen as our future suffering. It's sort of like you never knew that cigarettes could cause cancer. You smoked with a happy mind. You didn't know that it would cause cancer. I didn't know that smoking caused cancer. At some point when I was a raging hippie smoking marijuana in between times, I was smoking 80 Marlboros a day. I didn't know it would ruin my lungs. It hasn't, luckily. My lungs are fine. I'm a bit wheezy sometimes. So out of ignorance, you go, oh my God, what a fool. I can't believe myself. I regret that. Why? Because I don't want the suffering that's going to come. I don't want cancer. Oh my God, it's compassion for yourself. Regret is compassion for yourself. The way we misunderstand it, you know. I mean, some people I know who are even teaching the Dharma still think of it as guilt. It's so shocking how we misunderstand. Because there's no punisher, there's no rewarder. No one's punishing you. There's just this concept in Buddhism. You punish yourself. So you purify yourself. It's self-respect. It's an incredibly important practice to have. You should feel sad if you miss it at the end of the day. It's like doing your weeding every day. Cleaning up your act at the end of the day. It's so beneficial. Then as Lama Yeshe says, you go to bed with a happy mind, you know. Okay, now, you know, in the center here where I am in Santa Fe, because of Zoom these days, like a miracle, as we know, we're doing more and more, they're doing more meditation. So morning, 7 o'clock in the morning was a 30-minute little meditation. And now we're doing it 9 in the evening. It's 30-minute Vajrasattva, 30-minute purification, you know, end the day for people. And people like guided meditations. Okay. So this is the way our own mind creates enlightenment, Rinpoche says. Enlightenment is the creation of our own pure mind, our own positive thoughts. Hell is created by our own mind, the impure mind, the negative thoughts. All happiness, all suffering of all sentient beings are the products, the creations of our own minds. We are the creator. This is the key meaning. This is implying emptiness, the non-dualistic view of Buddhas. It's like a miracle, you know. With these purification practices, you can help your loved ones make their life most fruitful and most satisfying. They are prepared for death at any moment. So purify with the practice of prostration of 35 Buddhas. Purify with the practice of Vajrasattva, the 4 opponent powers. They get more advanced. Purify with Samaya Vajra. Purify with the abbreviated offering of Tok. High Soka Tantra, the Lamas wax lyrical about the incredible power of Tok offering as a practice, as a purification, as merit. And there's a short one. I mean, there's like a miniature version which is written, it takes like 5 minutes. It's unbelievable practice to do if you've got high Soka Tantra initiation. Every day, why not? 5 minutes is nothing. It's a miraculous practice. Purify with the offering of Tsog to Vajrasattva is a beautiful one that Lama Yeshe's written. So beautiful, so sweet, so poetic. It's in the book as well. Purify finally with self-initiation. This is so amazing, such a special, special practice. Okay, next chapter, what to do in the hours before. So they're all there's like up to here, there's about, you know, literally in order, all the practices up to 54. That's 54 practices so far, all listed. Because this is the thing, Rinpoche gave all these teachings. I mean, just to put together in a book all these teachings in one piece is about 40 pages. That's it. So we had to structure it in such a way that it was kind of chronological, you know, so you're able to get some sense of it. Because you just read Rinpoche's practices, he said, well, now you can do medicine Buddha and this and this and this and all in one big sentence. It's just overwhelming. So we had to structure it in such a way. That's why we numbered the practices. It makes it so much more orderly, and you're able to choose which one you want to do. You know, all the practices themselves are in the back of the book. Each practice has its own page. Even on Mani Padme Hum on one page, there it is, practice something, you know. So it makes it easy to choose. Because he gives so much advice, it's overwhelming. That's why, you know, that friend of mine said, I didn't know what to do because there was so much advice to give. Finally, what to do in the hours. So this last one was what finally, they're all the list of practices in the weeks and months before, and that's 54 of the 87. Now what to do, what to do the hours before death. And that means you've got to be aware of the person, where they're at, and when the death process is beginning to start. You've got to become familiar with this, you know, not that easy. So again, be quiet, as Rinpoche is saying. Recognize the stages of death. Have your loved one die. We did all this yesterday. We went through the different things, you know, the different practices. We went through all this. And then what to do in the hours and days after the breath stops. So the very next one is what to do when the breath stops. We mentioned all this. And then the various scenarios, you know, if your loved one dies at home, if your loved one dies in a hospital. We mentioned these briefly. The home one's the perfect one. You've got 3 days. You know, the luxury of the time to be totally in charge of the process. And even most Buddhists don't do that. Somehow people just don't think about it enough, I think. I mean, it used to be this way. When my grandma died, when Nanny died, my Nanny, we called her, we had the Catholics come in, the priest came in, the nuns came in. It was at least a day or two she was lying there, you know, in the house. We used to do it. Everything's organizational now, isn't it? So then, you know, if your loved one is at home. Now, the hospital one, I mentioned that. You've got to have your wits about you. You've got to organize in advance. And you've got to have in mind all the time what's best for your loved one, to try to get the quietest place, to try and get the, you know, and to try and have as much time as possible after your grandma stopped breathing, as much time as you can. Negotiate with the hospital beforehand. You know, do these, as we discussed all this, you know, all the different practices you can do. But if your loved one's in hospital, as you said. Now, the other one is if your loved one dies suddenly. Give the organs one. Were there any questions about the organs one? I think we finished that one, really. just the danger, the difficulty. You've got to think about it. Were there any? I mean, we'll have. Okay, let's have some questions now. Okay, were there any questions about this?
There were a couple of questions in the chat yesterday, Robina.
Oh, okay, we've got 4 minutes to go. We've got an hour and a half just gone by. I can't believe it. I won't see you till tomorrow. Let's have a few questions. That's okay with people.
Okay, I'm just going to take them from the chat. Ali, if it's Alia here, Alia Duffin, you had a question about CPR. If you'd like to unmute. Is Alia?
Thank you very much. This is a good one. That's related to what if you love one dies suddenly.
Hi, Robina.
Hello, sweetheart. Hi, Lago.
In relation to obviously don't touch the body and the whole discussion about organs. So
that's right.
My family are of the mind that if they stop breathing or their heart stops, they want CPR.
Of course they do.
I'm confused as to, well, if actually dead and they're not coming back because their karma's finished for living, then effectively you've electrocuted them and you've kissed them on the mouth. So that's like,
I understand. Yes, exactly. I know it's a difficult one. Exactly the point. This is exactly the point. And this is difficult. This is difficult because you've got to have the wisdom to know. I mean, do nurses and doctors, anybody there, nurses, do you know if a person really is dead or you just do CPR no matter what? Does a person that does come back to life from CPR, does that person look like they're dead? And can you see the difference? Can anybody tell me that?
I've done a bit of nursing. I worked in a hospital. I was doing mental health nursing as a student for a little bit. And we did kind of various things. And the medical first aid responders are trained that if you come across someone that isn't breathing and their heart isn't beating, then the first thing you do is do the CPR. You do the breaths and then you do the compressions. And if you've got a defibrillator, you grab that, and that will heal anyway. That's how it works.
So can anybody tell me, are those two hands up there, Anna and Sarah? Just keep staying there. I want to see what Anna and Sarah have to say about on this topic. Is it on this topic? Anna, Sarah, is it on this topic or is it something else?
Mine is. I mean,
who's talking? I can't. Sorry, who's talking?
Anna.
Oh, sorry, it's Anna.
Do you want to put your video on, Anna, so that Robina can see you?
Sorry, I'm out and about. It's probably not ideal at the moment. You're going to see all sorts. Okay,
so tell me what you know.
I mean, you do get people who just come back and actually get discharged from hospital and go back to their own life. I know that. I'm
asking you, Anna, in particular, darling, do you know, Anna, my question is very precise. Do you have experience of knowing if you look at a person who stopped breathing, can you tell the difference, if you're a professional, between a person who really is dead and therefore you wouldn't bother doing CPR, or a person who you would do CPR on? That's my, and of all the people, let's say you've done CPR on, how many of them come back to life or how many are actually dead? I'm just curious if you know the answer to that.
Venerable Robina, I'm going to interrupt because I've had a message from Kelly in the chat. She's a doctor and says that she can answer this. So Kelly, would you like to?
I'm talking to Anna right now. Then I'll talk to Kelly after that. Kelly next. So Anna,
sorry. I don't want to take Kelly's expertise, but I work in the field too. I mean, after about half an hour, you get what we call certain signs of death. But I mean, you wouldn't wait that long for CPR. So if you're asking, do they look the same for the first couple of minutes or whatever, I would say possibly, yeah. Okay. They probably do. It's very difficult.
No, I know that's the point. That's what I'm understanding. So, Anna, are there any? Would you be able to say, of all the people that say you've had experience of having CPR on, how many of them remain? How many of them don't come back?
Oh, the vast majority. I mean, casualty vastly overestimates it. They don't come back.
Saying the vast majority of people. Are you saying, Anna, the vast majority of people, from what you have learned, who you do CPR on, are actually dead and don't come back to life? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's interesting to hear that. Thank you, Anna. This is very, very helpful. Let's see what Kelly has to say.
Kelly, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, I would completely agree with what Anna said. I would say probably I think it's a slightly different survival rate as to kind of if you die in hospital and out of hospital, but you're talking 1 to 2% of people who actually
come back to life.
Yeah, who actually.
This is a really good point, Isla. So Kelly, you're saying, let's say your grandma suddenly drops dead in her soup. She's more than likely dead.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So this means the whole point here is we need to have our wits about us. Because the first thing we try to do, of course, we really mean well. We want to bring people back to life. And indeed, we know very well from what I discussed yesterday, we know that our experiences in many cultures of people you don't do anything to, and they're going to come back to life in the bloody coffin, for God's sake. So we know that's going to happen too. I don't know what the numbers on that are. But my feeling is, Isla, if we've really got our wits about us, and we really, you know, I mean, I'm wondering, like at the time of Tibet, they didn't probably learn CPR. You saw grandma dead, you think she's dead, and you do the prayers. So, of course, but the thing is with Lama, so this interesting point, when Lama Yeshe passed away, he was in hospital, and he died on the dawn of the morning of Tibetan New Year, 1984, March 4th, I think. I keep forgetting. But the thing was, Lama Zopa was always in touch with Song Rinpoche, and Lama Zopa was a yogi, right? So Lama Zopa was always in touch with Song Rinpoche, and he asked Song Rinpoche when he'd stopped breathing, what should I, he said, do everything you can to bring him back to life. So they used a defibrillator. That's that thing they put on the heart, is it, Kelly? And that's very violent, but they tried and tried. So then still Lama didn't come back. So that was auspicious, I suppose. So the thing is, if you know what you're doing and you see your grandma, she dropped dead in a soup, or your daddy had a heart attack, you know, you have to use your wisdom, and that's not easy, sweetheart. So, you know, you could argue, you could try to do, it's up to you to decide. There's no quick answer. If you know they're dead, but most of us don't have that experience, and we just panic and we do all the normal things. Like one of my friends, Paul, and his wife, or both were Buddhist, and the daughter was Buddhist. And Paul had a really bad heart, and he got his wife to promise if he had one more heart attack, he knew that would be the one that would kill him, do not call the ambulance. Well, he had his heart attack, and she panicked and called the ambulance. So of course they stick on. So this is the interesting point. He didn't die that second because the ambulance came and they kept him breathing. So he obviously didn't drop dead, but he had this heart attack. But they put the machines, they put all the wires on him, whatever they do. I don't know what the words are. And they took him to the hospital. So we knew he didn't want this. So we went to the hospital in the morning at dawn, me and the sister, and we did all the prayers he wanted. And then they pulled the plug, you know. So, but in that case, he didn't stop breathing totally. So you've got to just use your wits about it. You've got to think. But the thing is, my point is also, Isla, in this case, I mean, if it's you who die, you tell your husband, maybe you want to do CPR, maybe not. But please do these prayers, please do this, and have it all written, ready down, you know. So then, but if it's your husband, you got to decide. You got to decide. If it's the mouse or the dog, you got to decide. But even if they are doing CPR, maybe you do the prayers as well, shouting mantras in the ear of your loved one as you're doing the CPR. But you understand. But it's so fascinating to me that about 1%, 2% are actually not dead. That's interesting. So it shows we mean well. We really want to show we're doing everything to bring them back to life, but they're dead already, you know. So it's very interesting.
I'm inclined to leave it alone because I've read those statistics, because I researched this a while ago before I decided whether I wanted CPR or not. So I have a brand actually that says do not resuscitate.
Okay, good, very good. This is very common these days.
But like obviously my family say that, and I'm kind of like, well, the percentage chance of it actually
that's right, precisely,
is so slim that
that's right. And because you see, that's our trouble in our culture. We can't stand death. Death's like a mistake. Death is like you've failed, you know, so we'll do everything in our power. And that's why now we've created these bizarre anomalies for ourselves where we're able to keep dead people who ought to be dead, not ought to be, but people who can't sustain their own life, keeping them alive for 57 years. It's kind of demented. And so in those situations, not in this, it doesn't mention it in this book at all. It should have been. We should have asked Rinpoche. It's an important point. We haven't. So maybe in a reprint, we'll do it. But I mean, no, His Holiness has said it's just practical. You know, you take them off the machine and you dedicate, you know, you make sure you do everything right to help them, do all the pujas and prayers, and you use their money, things to do good things. Hello, come in. Oh God, I've got to go. I just forgot. Come in. I forgot I've got to be somewhere. I forgot the whole thing. So distant sweethearts, I've got to send you that meditation. Come in, please.
Robina, I've sent you my email address. So it should be at the front of your inbox to make it easier.
I'll send it to you right now. I'll send you that meditation, and then people do your best, keep your questions, and I won't see you till tomorrow. But do this meditation. I really request you to do it. Go slowly through it, get familiar with it, you know, and then just dedicate. Do it nice and slowly, taste it, experience it, and then have questions tomorrow. And before you know it, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, darlings. Much love.
Thank you so much, Robina. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, darling. Sorry to jump off.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.